Now to the war in Ukraine, which has since spilled back over into Russian territory. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy says the aim of Ukraine's surprise incursion into Russia is to create a buffer zone there. He said, quote, "Our primary task is to destroy as much Russian war potential as possible." This comes after Kyiv's forces say they've destroyed a second bridge in the Kursk region in an attempt to disrupt Moscow's combat operations and supply routes. Over 100 drones have also targeted Russian air bases. Russia has been using these bases to launch aerial strikes into Ukraine since the beginning of the war. Now Ukraine is hoping their offensive will help counter Russia's war planes.
A regular feature on Russian state TV, images of military aircraft in action. The planes attacking military positions and civilian infrastructure in Ukraine. Often with devastating glide bombs, leaving behind a trail of destruction. Such weapons are difficult to detect, and Russian warplanes often release them quite far from the front line. So the most effective option would be to destroy the aircraft and ammunition in the air or on the ground. And this is exactly what Ukrainian forces are trying to do. Last week they launched what they say was the world's largest long-range strike on Russian air bases, with more than 100 drones, attacking 3 major airfields inside Russia. Those bases hosting warplanes targeting Ukraine with glide bombs and missiles, including the hypersonic Kinzhal rockets. These satellite images show the aftermath of one of the strikes in Borysoglebsk. At least 2 hangars were destroyed. 2 fighter jets are also visible, but it's not clear if they were damaged. And this is what happened after a similar drone strike on the airbase in Lipetsk early in August. Hundreds of glide bombs were reported to have been destroyed in the attack. Ukraine's incursion into Russia's Kursk region is also believed to be helping achieve this goal.
Unfortunately, Ukraine does not have the possibility to conduct long-range strikes with the weapons that we possess to defend from the terror. There are no such decisions yet. Therefore, defense forces need to free those border areas from the Russian contingents that carry out strikes against Ukraine.
Some analysts say the incursion can increase Ukraine's range for striking Russian air bases. For now, Western allies are limiting the use of its long-range weapons like ATACMS. But Ukraine says to better counter Russian airstrikes, what it really needs is the green light from allied weapons suppliers to use them against targets deep inside Russia.
Let's bring in Fabrice Pothier here. He's former director of strategic policy planning at NATO and now runs Rasmussen Global, an international affairs consultancy. Thanks for being back on the program, Fabrice. Now, Ukraine has taken the fight to Russia with its troops crossing the border and occupying Russian territory in the Kursk region. President Zelenskyy says the goal is to create a kind of buffer zone. How much of a difference do you think that can make in this war?
Well, it's hard to speculate. And also, I think it is clear that the objectives are stated as the success change, meaning that I think there's been some ambiguity on what exactly the Ukrainians wanted to achieve in this incursion. And they're clarifying some of the objectives, the latest being a buffer zone, as they can actually get closer to be able to successfully achieve that. So I think we have to hold our definite assessment on that. But clearly, it has shifted the focus of the war from a war of attrition on the long and painful front line in Ukraine to one where Ukraine has managed to create some operational surprise in Moscow, but also, I think, operational surprise with its allies. And this is where the debate now on the long-range missiles is becoming, again, very important, because Ukraine is showing that it is creating almost a de facto long range. And now we have to deliver our bit, which is to release some of the caveats, especially American ones, on some of the weapon systems so that Ukrainians can better defend themselves.
Why has Russia not managed to repel the Ukrainian incursion? Is it because it's not capable or because it's busy making more valuable gains on other fronts?
Well, clearly this part of the Russian territory was not defended with the best forces, possibly some reserve or some younger, less trained conscripts. So that's one thing. Second, yes, in principle, the better forces are already allocated to the 1,000-kilometer front line, and that was also the aim of the Ukrainian incursion, was to divert some of the better forces from the eastern front line, which are creating a real pressure on the Ukrainian forces and Ukrainian civilian population centers. So that's one thing. Second, I think we should not underestimate Russia's capacity to respond in different ways, both in moving forces from other parts of the Russian territory to come to defend the Kursk Oblast. But we should not also underestimate, sadly, Vladimir Putin's willingness and capacity to escalate and to go after something spectacular that could really, I think, signal that he is pushing back on what is seen as a red line for him, because this is Ukrainian forces stepping in on the holy Russian territory.
Ukraine keeps begging its Western backers to allow their weapons to be used to strike targets deeper inside Russia. You already mentioned this. You've said before that these limitations amount to Ukraine having to fight the war with one hand tied behind its back. Do you see any chance of the limitations on those long-range weapons being lifted?
I think one thing is the most Western capitals are still not fully operational in terms of, we're still in, many officials are not available. And second, I think there's a lot of wait and see for the moment of looking at how this operation is translating. Is it going to be something now that is kind of more turnable, more sustainable? And if yes, is it changing the terms of this war for better terms for the Ukrainians? And if yes, will we be willing to go the extra mile, especially Berlin and Washington, in providing longer range weapons? So I think this is where we are. Possibly we're entering this period now in the next few weeks, and hopefully by, I would say, the UN General Assembly meeting, when many leaders, including Ukrainian leader, will assemble, there will be a new threshold passed in supporting the Ukrainian defense.
Fabrice, thank you very much for talking with us again. That was Fabrice Pothier, former director of strategy planning at NATO, now running the Rasmussen Global, an international affairs consultancy.